My family cheated me and held my daughter's wedding without me while laughing behind my back. I should have known. Looking back now, all the signs were there, little moments, offhand comments, subtle shifts in behavior. Had I been paying attention, they would have told me exactly where I stood in my own family. But I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy being the provider, the dependable one, the fool who thought love and sacrifice were enough to keep a family together. I was wrong. Let me introduce myself. My name is Malcolm, and I'm 58 years old. For the better part of my life, I did what a good husband and father was supposed to do. I worked hard, built a life for my family, provided, protected, and made sure they had more than I ever did growing up. I wasn't born into wealth, no silver spoon, no inheritance waiting for me at the end of some trust fund. I worked for everything. I started at a small accounting firm, climbing my way up the corporate ladder while Deborah, my wife, stayed home to raise our daughter, Sophia. It was a role we both agreed on. She wanted to be there for Sophia full-time, and I wanted to make sure they never had to worry about money. So I worked hard, late nights at the office, missed weekends, skipped vacations, all of it to make sure my family had the best. I bought us a comfortable house in Rosewood Heights, a quiet suburban neighborhood where kids rode their bikes down the street and families gathered for Sunday barbecues. I made sure Sophia went to the best private schools, paid for every extracurricular activity she wanted, and when the time came, I wrote the check for her entire college tuition, debt-free, no loans, just a father taking care of his daughter. I never once asked for a thank you. You see, I never needed gratitude. That wasn't why I did it. I did it because they were my family, my wife, my daughter. They were my world. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Maybe it was subtle at first, small moments I brushed off because surely my own wife and daughter wouldn't take me for granted. Like the way Deborah started making financial decisions without me, small at first. An expensive piece of furniture here, a last-minute vacation there. Whenever I questioned it, she'd wave me off, saying, "You can afford it, Malcolm. Why are you making a big deal?" Or the way Sophia's gratitude became expectation. She never hesitated to ask for money, new clothes, trips with friends, an apartment in the city, but the words "thank you, Dad" became rare, almost non-existent. Then there was the wedding. When Sophia got engaged to Tyler, a corporate attorney from a well-off family, I was thrilled for her. I offered to pay for the wedding, despite Tyler's parents insisting they could handle half. No, I had said, smiling at my daughter. "This is my gift to you. I want you to have the wedding of your dreams." I should have seen it then, the shift in Sophia's expression, the way her eyes flickered toward her mother as if silently confirming something between them. I should have paid attention when Deborah started making all the decisions without asking for my input, the venue, the guest list, the catering, all handled by them while I signed the checks like some faceless sponsor. I should have noticed the way they never talked about the wedding when I was around. But I didn't. Because why would I? Why would I ever think that my own wife and daughter would exclude me from the very wedding I paid for? I ignored the signs. I told myself it was just pre-wedding stress, that they'd include me when it mattered. I was wrong. A day before what I thought was the wedding, I walked into the kitchen, smiled at Deborah, and said, "I can't wait for the wedding tomorrow." That's when she laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a guilty giggle, but a full-blown amused chuckle, as if I had just told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "What?" she said, still smiling. "When a wedding happened yesterday." That moment, that exact moment, split my life into two parts. Before that moment, I was Malcolm, the devoted husband and father, the provider, the man who did everything for his family. After that moment, I became something else, because standing there in my own kitchen, staring at my wife's smug expression, I felt something inside me snap, not in rage, not in heartbreak, but in cold, quiet realization. They had never planned to invite me. This wasn't some scheduling mistake. They had deliberately left me out. I turned to Sophia, waiting for her to correct her mother. She didn't. Instead, she hesitated, then picked up her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it up for me to see. There they were, all of them. Deborah, Sophia, Tyler, the in-laws, my siblings, my nieces and nephews, smiling, laughing, celebrating at a wedding I paid for, without me. My heart pounded in my chest, but my face remained calm. I looked at my wife, the woman I had spent more than 30 years of my life with, the woman I had built a home for, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally. She shrugged, a casual, dismissive shrug, like I was some distant acquaintance they had forgotten to call. "I guess I forgot to tell you, huh?" she said. It was like it was nothing, like I meant nothing. That was the moment I knew. They didn't just take me for granted. They didn't just see me as the wallet, the provider, the necessary burden in their perfect little lives. They saw me as irrelevant. I set my coffee mug down on the counter carefully, without a word, without a reaction. Deborah raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to explode, to yell, to demand an explanation. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, sensing that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I turned around, walked to the hallway, grabbed my coat from the rack, and stepped outside into the cold air. No yelling, no questioning, no begging to be included. Because in that moment, I realized something they had failed to consider. I had spent my whole life taking care of them, but they had never once considered what would happen if I decided to stop. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. No missed calls, no texts. I wasn't an afterthought, I wasn't a thought at all. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and whispered to myself, "Let's see how much they laugh when I walk away for good." Because that's exactly what I was about to do, and they were about to regret every second of it. I stood outside my own house, the cold air biting at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill that had settled deep inside me. I should have been angry, furious, heartbroken, but I felt none of those things. Instead, I felt empty. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization that I had spent my entire life believing in an illusion of love, family, loyalty. I had built my world around them, sacrificed for them, trusted them, only to find out I was never truly part of theirs. They hadn't forgotten me, they had excluded me on purpose. That fact settled in my bones, like an unbearable weight, heavier than any exhaustion I had ever felt before. I stared at my phone, my fingers numb from both the cold and the silent rage curling in my gut. No missed calls, no texts, no last-minute explanations, nothing. Not even a fake attempt to cover up what they had done. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath cloud in the winter air, and did something I never thought I'd do. I opened my banking app. For the first time in decades, I looked at my finances. Not as a provider, not as a husband or father, but as a man who had been used. A man who had been nothing more than an ATM to his own family. There it was, every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, every check sent to Sophia, every monthly deposit into Deborah's personal account, all done by me, for them. And they had the audacity to throw a wedding without me. I inhaled sharply, my fingers tightening around my phone as I scrolled through my transactions. The wedding payments, every single venue deposit, catering expense, floral arrangement, dress fitting, and luxury honeymoon package had been covered by me. And yet, they had looked me in the eye, laughed in my face, and acted like I was irrelevant. I had funded an event I wasn't even considered worthy enough to attend. My mind was running, piecing everything together, and with each realization, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just a moment of forgetfulness. This wasn't an accident. This was calculated. I turned around and walked back toward the house, my steps slow, deliberate. I wasn't sure what I expected to find when I walked back inside. Maybe a sliver of remorse, maybe even a half-hearted attempt at an apology. But when I stepped through the front door, all I heard was laughter. Deborah's light, careless chuckle, Sophia's amused giggle. I stopped just before entering the dining room, listening. "Tad's going to be fine," Sophia was saying, her voice casual, unconcerned. "Only she always gets over things." "Exactly," Deborah agreed. "Well, you know how he is. He sulks for a while, then he moves on." "I told you, honey, he wouldn't have fit in at the wedding anyway. It was elegant. You know how stiff he can be." My blood turned to ice. Elegant? Stiff? I took a slow, measured breath and stepped into the room. The second they saw me, the conversation stopped. Sophia stiffened, her lips pressing together. Deborah looked up at me, her face smooth, unreadable. They weren't guilty, they were waiting for me to act the way they expected, angry at first, but eventually forgiving. Because that's what I had always done. I let things go. I kept the peace. I swallowed my hurt because I thought that's what family was supposed to do. Not this time. "So," I said, keeping my voice steady, "Sophia threw a wedding without me." Sophia sighed, already tired of the conversation she had barely participated in. "Oh, Dad, please don't make this dramatic." I arched an eyebrow. "Dramatic? I wasn't even invited to my own daughter's wedding." "It wasn't like that," Deborah cut in smoothly. "We just figured—" "Oh no," I interrupted, my voice dangerously calm. "Pon, you didn't forget. You decided I didn't belong." No one spoke. I looked at Sophia. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I asked. She shrugged. "Oh, Dad, you're acting like we abandoned you. It was just a wedding. I'm still your daughter. You're still my father. Nothing changes. Nothing changes." I let those words sink in, the sheer audacity of them. They had excluded me, mocked me behind my back, used me, and still expected me to continue providing for them as if nothing had happened. I was done. Completely, entirely done. "It's all right," I said softly, stepping back from the table. "Nothing changes." They didn't notice the shift in my tone. They didn't realize I had just made the biggest decision of my life. Deborah took a sip of her wine. "Malcolm, don't be childish. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Aaron, a big deal out of nothing, I repeated. Sophia rolled her eyes. Dad, come on. We had limited seats and Mom thought, I repeated. So you had no say in your own wedding guest list? Sophia hesitated, and that's when I saw it. She hadn't cared enough to argue. She hadn't cared enough to fight for me. I nodded slowly, stepping back toward the hallway. Got it. Deborah raised an eyebrow. Where are you going? In need some air, I said simply. I grabbed my coat again, walked outside, and did what I should have done years ago. I opened my banking app again, and one by one, started shutting it all down. The mortgage payments? Stopped. The credit cards in Deborah's name? Canceled. The monthly deposits into Sophia's account? Gone. The inheritance fund I'd set up for her? Revoked. They didn't need me at the wedding. Let's see how well they did without my money either. I stood on the porch, taking in the quiet night, feeling lighter than I had in years. They thought I was predictable. They thought I would always bend, always forgive, always stay. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated just how much I could take. And they were about to find out what it felt like when the man they used stopped playing the fool. Because as far as I was concerned, I was done being their ATM, and I had no plans of looking back. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house I had spent the last 30 years building. The house that had seen birthdays, anniversaries, first steps, and late-night family dinners. A home, or at least that's what I had thought it was. But homes are built on love, on mutual respect, on the belief that you belong. And I didn't belong here anymore. Not to them. To them, I was a bank account with legs, a walking convenience, the one they turned to when bills needed paying, when debts needed clearing, when dreams needed funding. But when it came to including me in their lives, I was disposable. And the worst part? I had let it happen. For years I had excused it, ignored it, rationalized it. I had told myself, that's just how families are. I had let myself believe that as long as I kept giving, kept sacrificing, they would see my worth. But they had seen my worth, they just never valued it. A cold, sharp realization settled in my chest as I sat in the driveway, the glow of the house's windows illuminating the stark truth. This wasn't a mistake. They weren't sorry, and they weren't going to change, so why the hell should I stay? I reached for my phone, opening the contact list. My lawyer's number was near the top. I stared at it. I could start right now, call him, tell him to start the paperwork, divorce, financial restructuring, asset liquidation. Everything I had built for them, the house, the credit cards, the safety net, it all existed because of me, and if I walked away, if I truly, completely walked away, they had nothing. I let out a slow breath, pressing my thumb against my phone screen, but I didn't call, not yet, because I wasn't done, not yet. I pushed the door open, stepping back into the freezing night air. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked back to the house, my footsteps deliberate, my heartbeat steady. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. When I walked inside, Deborah was still at the dining table, sipping her wine like nothing had happened. Sophia had moved to the couch, scrolling through her phone, her face as blank as ever. I stood in the entryway, watching them. They didn't even flinch, didn't look guilty, didn't even try to explain themselves. Because why would they? They thought they had already won, that I would get over it like I always did, that I would sulk for a few days, then go back to paying for their lives like nothing had happened. I let the silence stretch. Then finally Deborah sighed, setting her glass down with a soft clink. Are you done being dramatic? I smiled. Not because I was amused, not because I found any of this remotely funny, but because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't being dramatic, I was being done. No, I'm done all right. Her eyebrows knitted together, the first flicker of something that almost looked like unease crossing her face. Look, Malcolm, she said, exasperation in her voice. I know you're upset, but it was just a wedding. You're acting like we burned the house down. I tilted my head slightly. That's an interesting way to put it, Deborah, because, in a way, you did. She scoffed. Oh, come on. I turned my gaze to Sophia. And you? I asked. Oh, nothing to say? Sophia barely looked up from her phone. Oh, Dad, you're taking this way too seriously. We didn't mean to hurt you. Mom thought, I repeated. Sophia hesitated, then shrugged. Look, I just went along with it. It wasn't personal. Not personal. My own daughter had chosen to go along with excluding me from her wedding, had smiled for the cameras, danced under the lights, toasted to her new life while knowing I was sitting at home, thinking I still had a place in her world. And it wasn't personal. I felt something deep inside me go quiet, numb. All right, I said simply. Deborah frowned. All right, that's it? Sweet, that's it. I turned, walked down the hall, and into our bedroom. I didn't slam the door, didn't rip things off the walls, didn't throw things into a suitcase. Because this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment reaction. This was deliberate, planned, final. I pulled open the closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. Shirts, pants, the essentials. I didn't need much because I wasn't planning on coming back. Behind me, I heard Deborah's voice float in from the hallway. "Oh, stop it, Malcolm. You're not leaving. Where would you even go?" I zipped up the bag, swung it over my shoulder, and stepped into the doorway. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But wherever it is, it'll be better than here." For the first time that night I saw it, the first real flicker of fear in her eyes. Because she hadn't expected this. She had expected resistance, expected anger, expected me to throw a fit but eventually stay. She hadn't expected me to walk away. I brushed past her, feeling the weight lift off my chest with every step I took toward the front door. Malcolm, she called, sharper now. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't respond. I didn't even look back. I just walked, one step after another. Then I reached the front door, wrapped my fingers around the handle and opened it. The cold air rushed in, cutting through the warmth of the house. Our house? No, not anymore. Not ours, not mine, just theirs. And they could keep it. Because I was done. Completely, entirely done. I stepped out, letting the door shut behind me with a soft click. And I didn't look back. Not once. Not when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. Not when Deborah called my name again, her voice edging towards something almost panicked. Not when I got into my car, started the engine, and pulled away from the house I had built with my own hands. I had walked away from a lifetime of sacrifice, and for the first time in 30 years I felt free. They thought they had won. They thought they could laugh it off, brush it aside, let time smooth over the wounds they inflicted. But they had no idea what was coming next. Because the thing about taking someone for granted is that you never realize what they truly gave you until they take it all back. I drove through the quiet streets of Rosewood Heights, my fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The streetlights cast long shadows across the road, their glow blurring slightly as my vision swam with the weight of the evening. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even shocked anymore. I was just done. Done pretending, done excusing, done sacrificing for people who had made it abundantly clear that my worth to them began and ended with how much money I could hand over. It was a strange thing to realize that the family I had built my entire world around had never truly considered me a part of theirs. And now, they were about to feel what that meant. As I pulled into the parking lot of a small motel on the outskirts of town, I reached for my phone, not to call Deborah, not to respond to the barrage of messages and missed calls that had started the moment I walked out the door. I had no interest in what they had to say. Instead, I opened my banking app. For years, I had handled our finances alone. It had been a necessity, really. Deborah had never cared about managing money, and Sophia had never been interested in understanding where all the luxury she enjoyed came from. So I had managed it all: the mortgage, the credit cards, the savings accounts, the monthly deposits into Sophia's checking account, the household expenses. Deborah never even glanced at the medical insurance that covered not just my family, but her mother as well. I had funded their entire world, and they had laughed in my face. That ends tonight. With a few taps, I froze the joint account Deborah had access to. Her credit cards? Canceled. The mortgage auto payments? Stopped. The monthly allowance Sophia received like clockwork? Gone. I moved my personal savings into a new, separate account, one with only my name on it. I wasn't a fool. I knew Deborah would see the changes soon. She'd call the bank, try to override the restrictions, throw a fit when she realized that, for the first time in her life, she had no control over me. And then she'd panic, and that's what I was waiting for. I set the phone down, leaning back against the cheap motel headboard, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I felt light. I had spent decades giving. Tonight, for the first time ever, I had taken back, and they were about to realize just how much I had given them. The first signs of desperation came quickly. I woke up to 26 missed calls. I let them sit there, untouched, as I went about my morning. By the time I had showered, grabbed coffee from the lobby, and stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the messages had started rolling in. First, Deborah and Malcolm, what the hell is going on? My card just got declined at the store. Did you forget to pay the mortgage? I just got an email about a late fee. Call me now. Okay, this isn't funny. My accounts are frozen. I can't access anything. Fix this. Then Sophia to Dad, my card isn't working. Did something happen with the bank? Punt Dad, answer me. Mom's freaking out. Okay, seriously, what's going on? I have bills to pay. Are you mad about the wedding? Come on, Dad, it wasn't personal. You're making a huge deal out of nothing. Oh, there it was. The entitlement, the casual dismissal, the assumption that I would cave. They still didn't get it. They still thought I was playing a game. I smirked, sipping my coffee as I scrolled to the next message. Deborah again now, Malcolm. You are acting childish. You can't just cut us off like this. We are your family. There it was, the family card. I exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. They weren't worried about me. They weren't calling because they had realized their mistake. They were panicking because they had just lost their safety net, and they had no idea what to do. The first phone call didn't take long. By noon, my phone was ringing again. I let it go to voicemail the first 2 times, but by the third, I was curious. I answered. "Ain Malcolm." Deborah's voice was shrill, breathless. I could hear noise in the background, probably the bank. "Morning, Deborah," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. There was a pause. She hadn't expected me to sound so at ease. "What the hell is going on?" she snapped. "Why can't I access our accounts? Why is everything frozen?" I hummed. That's weird." "Malcolm, this isn't funny." "So, said I was joking?" Silence. Then, quieter, more controlled. "Okay, I get that you're upset, but this is ridiculous. You're not thinking straight." "Tono, I'm thinking perfectly straight," I said, and probably for the first time in years. Another pause, then a scoff. "So what, you're punishing us? That's what this is?" "Oh no, Deborah," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't punishment. This is me resigning." "Can't resigning?" she repeated. "From my role as your personal bank." A sharp inhale, then anger. "When you can't just walk away from your responsibilities, Malcolm." I laughed, actually laughed. "Wayne, responsibilities?" I echoed. "You mean like the responsibility of paying for a wedding I wasn't even invited to?" More silence. She had no response for that. And that silence, that was the moment I knew I had won. I didn't need to explain myself, didn't need to argue, didn't need to yell. They had played their hand, and now they were watching everything crumble. By the end of the week, the aftermath was clear. Deborah had maxed out every credit card she still had access to. The mortgage was officially 2 weeks late. Sophia's lifestyle had come to a screeching halt. And me? I was fine, better than fine. I was free. I hadn't realized just how much weight I had been carrying until I set it all down. They had spent years using me, draining me, expecting me to keep giving without hesitation. They thought I was predictable. They thought I would always come back. But they had made one critical mistake. They had forced me to see the truth. And once I had seen it, there was no going back. So, as I sat in my rented apartment, staring at the new life unfolding in front of me, I smiled. Because this wasn't the end of the story. No, this was just the beginning of their regret. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who had to fix it. The thing about people who take you for granted is that they never see the consequences coming. They assume you'll always be there, waiting, ready, willing to forgive, to fix things, to continue playing your role. And for years I had. I had been the provider, the problem solver, the man who always came through. But when I walked away, when I stopped playing their game, that's when the real panic set in. Because for the first time in their lives, they had to fend for themselves, and they were not prepared. At first, they thought it was a mistake. Deborah must have assumed it was a temporary inconvenience, a bank issue, a technical glitch. Sophia probably thought I was just sulking, that I'd cool off in a day or two, and everything would go back to normal. But by the 3rd day, reality had started to sink in. Deborah's credit cards were still declined. The mortgage payment hadn't gone through. Sophia's account was still empty. Their safety net was gone, permanently. I hadn't just stopped helping, I had shut down their entire financial world. And now, they were desperate. By the 4th day, my phone was blowing up. Deborah was alternating between angry demands and pathetic pleas. "And Malcolm, what the hell is going on? I just got an overdraft notice. Fix this. And you can't access any of our savings." "What did you do?" "This is insane." So you can't just leave me like this. We have bills." "Boss said I don't know what's gotten into you, but we need to talk. Please, Malcolm, just call me." Then there was Sophia. At first, she tried to be casual. "Hey, Dad, so I think something's wrong with my bank account. Can you check? Maybe there was an error." Then frustration. "Dad, I have rent due. I need that money. Are you seriously ignoring me?" And then panic. "Dad, please. I don't have enough to cover my bills this month. Just send it this one time and I swear I'll never ask again." I read the messages slowly, sipping my coffee, feeling nothing, no guilt, no hesitation, just satisfaction. Because this was them finally understanding what I had known for years. I was never appreciated, only expected. And they were finally feeling what it was like to be on their own. By the 5th day, the messages weren't enough. Now they were calling nonstop. The first call came from Deborah. I let it go to voicemail. The second came 2 minutes later, ignored. Then Sophia, rejected. Then Deborah again. Pick up the damn phone, Malcolm. I let them stew in their panic. By nightfall, the voicemails had piled up. I played one, just to hear how desperate they were getting. Deborah's voice came through the speaker, tightly controlled but laced with frustration. Hey, Malcolm, this isn't funny. You need to fix this right now. I can't even buy groceries. My cards are all declined. What are you trying to prove? I smirked. I get that you're mad about the wedding, she continued, her voice soothing now, manipulative. But this is cruel, Malcolm. You're punishing your own family. Do you really want to be that man? There it was, the guilt trip, the attempt to make me feel like the villain. I deleted the voicemail, because I wasn't falling for it, not this time. By the end of the first week, the panic had hit full force. Sophia had maxed out her remaining credit card. Deborah had called every bank representative she could. They had reached out to relatives trying to borrow money, and when that didn't work, they started to crack. That night, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen, Deborah. I almost ignored it until I noticed something different. She wasn't just calling, she was FaceTiming. I let it ring for a few seconds before answering. When her face appeared on the screen, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked unraveled, her hair a mess, her face pale, her usual poise gone. Malcolm, she breathed, her voice raw. I raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? She stared at me, as if trying to figure out who I was, because this Malcolm, the one who was calm, indifferent, untouchable, wasn't the man she was used to manipulating. "Oh, I need to talk," she said finally. "When we are talking," I said, sipping my coffee. Her jaw tightened. "Oh, Malcolm, I don't have time for this. We can't keep living like this. The bank won't reverse the freezes. The house payment is due in a few days. Sophia is panicking and—" She blinked. "And what does that have to do with me?" Her mouth opened, then shut. Because she didn't have an answer. For decades I had been the fixer, the one who made things right. Now I wasn't lifting a damn finger. Malcolm, she tried again. I know we hurt you. I know you're upset, but this isn't just about us. This is about our family. Family, I echoed. She nodded quickly, hope sparking in her eyes. Geez, family. We need to work this out. You need to come home. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. Deborah, let me ask you something. She hesitated. What? I leaned forward, my expression turning cold. Did I look like family when you threw a wedding without me? Silence. Complete, utter silence. Deborah's face drained of color because she knew there was no coming back from this. Good night, Deborah, I said calmly, and then I ended the call. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Because for the first time, they weren't my problem anymore. I wasn't the safety net. I wasn't the solution. I was just a man who had finally woken up. And tomorrow, they were going to wake up too. Because this wasn't temporary, this wasn't a lesson, this was permanent, and they had no one to blame but themselves. I knew the moment was coming, the moment where they stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding and started realizing what they had actually done. It had taken longer than I expected. They had wasted time yelling, blaming, demanding, convinced that their outrage would somehow reverse the situation. But when their credit card stayed frozen, when the mortgage default notices arrived, when Sophia's landlord started asking about her late rent, and when the groceries in the fridge started running low, that's when they understood. And that's when they came to find me. It was a quiet morning, peaceful, the kind of morning where I could sip my coffee, enjoy the fresh air, and feel the weight of my old life fully lifting off my shoulders. I had been staying in a furnished apartment across town. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, a space free from their expectations, their demands, their endless cycle of entitlement. I had just settled into my chair, my phone on silent, when the knocking started, loud, persistent. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I already knew who it was, Deborah and Sophia. And just like that, the moment had arrived. I set my coffee down, exhaled slowly through my nose, and walked to the door. I let them knock one more time, harder. Then I opened it, face to face with desperation. Deborah looked exhausted, her hair a mess, her eyes dark with frustration. Sophia, standing just behind her, wasn't much better. The confidence, the smug attitude, the casual dismissal from before, gone. What stood before me now were two people who finally understood what they had lost. And Malcolm, Deborah started, her voice tight, controlled. I leaned against the doorframe, calm, unbothered, waiting. She took a breath. We need to talk. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, about what? Sophia shifted behind her mother. Dad, come on, don't do this. I raised an eyebrow. Do what? Deborah let out a sharp breath. Enough of this, she snapped. You've made your point. We get it. But this needs to end. Party, kiss, I repeated, my voice even. Is this, she hissed, crossing her arms. Your little act, your silent treatment, your refusal to fix what you broke. I actually let out a short laugh at that. Tawny broke? You think I broke something? Sure, obviously, she shot back. When you destroyed our finances overnight, I can't access anything. I can't pay for the house. Sophia is struggling. What did you think would happen? I leaned against the doorway. Oh, I knew exactly what would happen. Sophia's voice was smaller now, more hesitant. Dad, please. I looked at her. My daughter, the same daughter who had stood in front of me days ago, shrugged and told me my absence at her wedding wasn't personal. The same daughter who had spent years taking and taking, never giving a damn about what it cost me. And now she wanted mercy. I let the silence stretch between us. Then I smiled. No. Deborah's eyes widened. Sophia took a step forward. Oh, Dad, wait. But Deborah wasn't willing to plead. No, she still thought she could win. You're being ridiculous, Malcolm, she snapped. This is petty. It's childish. No, I interrupted. She blinked. You don't get to stand here and call me ridiculous, Deborah, I said, my voice cool and controlled. You don't get to call me petty when you and Sophia threw a wedding that I paid for without me. You don't get to act like I'm the one who's unreasonable when you spent years treating me like an afterthought. Deborah's lips pressed into a thin line. Sophia swallowed hard. That's not fair, she murmured. I laughed again. Fair? I repeated. Oh, tell me, Sophia, was it fair when you stood in front of me and told me my presence at your wedding didn't matter? Was it fair when you cashed every check I ever sent you, knowing you'd never once invited me into your life? She looked away. It wasn't like that, she mumbled. Then how was it? I pressed. She had no answer. Neither did Deborah, because there wasn't an excuse left that I would accept. Deborah sighed, rubbing her temples. All right, she said, her voice softer now. I'll admit, we should have handled things differently. Should have handled things differently. I let the words settle in my chest. They weren't apologizing. They weren't admitting they were wrong. They were just maneuvering, trying to say just enough to convince me to fix everything again. I see, I said finally. And you should have handled things differently. Deborah nodded quickly. Yes, exactly. And now we can fix it, she added. We, I echoed, smirking. Another pause. Deborah swallowed. And Malcolm, she tried again. Come home. Let's move past this. We can fix it together. There it was. The plea, the expectation. Because to her, this was just another fight. She thought that if she offered just enough fake regret, I would step back into my old role. She thought I would take my wallet out and fix the problem, just like I always did. But I wasn't that man anymore, and I never would be again. Oh no, I said. Sophia's head snapped up. What? Oh no, I repeated, shrugging. I'm not fixing this. I'm not coming home. I'm not paying for anything else. Deborah's face twisted. Oh, you're seriously just abandoning your family? I smiled. No, Deborah. My family abandoned me a long time ago. I'm just finally accepting it. Her mouth opened, closed. She had nothing left to say. I took one last look at Sophia, waiting to see if she'd try, really try. But she just stood there, silent. That was my final confirmation. She was her mother's daughter. I exhaled slowly and stepped back inside. Deborah's voice came sharply behind me. He'll regret this, Malcolm, she spat. I turned one last time. Oh no, Deborah, I said, smiling. Oh, he will. Then, I shut the door in their faces. I didn't check my phone for hours, didn't listen to the voicemails, didn't care about whatever excuses or insults they had left. Because this was the moment they had never thought would happen. The moment they realized that I wasn't coming back. And now, they were truly, completely on their own. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. And it felt damn good. I didn't expect silence. Not right away. Not from them. Deborah and Sophia weren't the type to accept consequences gracefully. They had spent years knowing that no matter what they did, no matter how careless, entitled, or dismissive they were, I would always be there to clean up the mess. So when I shut the door in their faces, I fully expected round 2 to begin. The shouting, the guilt trips, the threats. But for the first time, they had nothing left to say. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't just angry, they were afraid. Afraid because this time there was no safety net, and I had finally fully walked away. The first public sign of collapse came less than a week later. Deborah had never worked a day in her life. She had built her entire identity around being the wife of a financially stable man, the woman who hosted dinner parties, made snide comments about other people's struggles, and shopped like money grew on trees. And for a long time, it had worked for her because I had let it. But now she was struggling, and people were noticing. The first time I heard about it, I was in line at a coffee shop, waiting for my order, when a voice behind me caught my attention. I swear I saw Deborah at the grocery store using coupons. In coupons? Another voice laughed. No way. She once told me only broke people use those. I'm serious. She was arguing with the cashier over a discount. I thought she was going to lose it. I couldn't help but smirk. I could picture it now, Deborah standing in the checkout line, realizing in real time that she was no longer above consequences, that for the first time in decades, she was living like everyone else. And she hated it. But it wasn't just Deborah who was feeling the burn. Sophia was crashing even harder. For years, she had been the golden girl, the one who bragged about her perfect life, flaunted the expensive gifts she never had to pay for, and acted like she was born lucky instead of just being funded by me. Now, she was struggling to keep up the act. Her friends noticed first, the ones who used to go on trips with her, dine at expensive restaurants, expect lavish birthday gifts. Because suddenly she wasn't offering to pay anymore. She wasn't shopping like she used to. She wasn't bragging. And in their world, that meant something was wrong. I didn't even have to check my phone for updates because people talked and saw Sophia at that boutique she loves, but she didn't buy anything. Yeah, I heard she's been dodging our usual brunch meetups. See, you think something happened? Saint-Giro, something happened, all right. She lost her golden ticket. She lost me. A month later, the house was in trouble. It wasn't immediate. They had a little cushion from the savings they had left, but it didn't last long because they had never learned how to manage money. And it showed. The first missed mortgage payment was a warning. The second one came with late fees and penalties. By the third, they were in serious trouble. And then I got a call from the bank. Mr. Carter, we're reaching out regarding the property on Ashwood Lane. I sipped my coffee. Oh? What about it? Funny, we've noticed that payments have been delayed, and given that your name is still listed as primary on the mortgage, we wanted to check in. I smirked. Oh no, I appreciate that, but that's no longer my responsibility. There was a pause. And I'm sorry, sir, are you saying you're surrendering the property? I'm saying Chanti team, saying that the people living there need to figure it out on their own. Another pause.
I understand, sir.
We'll proceed with the standard process. That was all I needed to hear, because standard process meant foreclosure. And Deborah and Sophia were about to learn the hard way what happened when the person they had used for decades finally stopped paying the bills. It was only a matter of time before word spread. Deborah had spent years looking down on other people, mocking their struggles, acting superior, pretending like she was part of some elite class simply because she had been married to me. But now she was the struggling one and people were watching. Did you hear about Deborah? I heard she's late on the house payments, so I thought they had money. But what happened? What happened? They took me for granted. That's what happened. I knew it was coming. The moment when Sophia would finally break down and admit she needed me. And when it came, it was late at night. My phone buzzed, and for a moment I considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. I picked up. Dad. Her voice was small, weak. I said nothing, letting the silence weigh on her. Dad, She hesitated. I don't know what to do. I leaned back in my chair. About what? She swallowed hard. Everything. The bills, the house. Mom is freaking out. Her voice cracked. I think we're going to lose everything. I let that hang in the air. Because that was the moment she finally understood. Not just the financial consequences, but the truth that I wasn't coming back, that I wasn't bailing them out, that for the first time in her entire life she was going to have to face the consequences of her choices. I'm sorry, she whispered. I sighed, rubbing my temple. Are you sorry, Sophia, or are you just scared? She didn't answer right away because she didn't know the difference. And that was the biggest problem of all. I just want things to go back to how they were, she said finally. I smiled, but I never will. And with that, I hung up. By the end of the second month, the house was officially in foreclosure. Deborah tried to fight it, tried to appeal to the bank, but without my income she couldn't keep up. Sophia had to move in with a friend. And me? I moved on. I had peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Because they had spent years treating me like I was replaceable, like I was nothing more than a wallet. And now, they finally understood the truth. I was the only reason they ever had anything at all. And when I walked away, they lost everything. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And it had been a long time coming. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, the cool morning breeze brushing against my skin as I sipped my coffee. For the first time in decades, my life was quiet. No urgent emails about payments. No last-minute calls from Deborah demanding money for something she forgot to tell me about. No passive-aggressive messages from Sophia guilt-tripping me into covering her lifestyle choices. Just peace. And I was finally starting to understand what that felt like. A life without obligations. It had been 3 months since I had cut them off, 3 months since I had walked away from the house, from the responsibilities, from the never-ending cycle of giving while receiving nothing in return. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. For years, my entire existence had revolved around providing for other people. My schedule had been dictated by their needs, my finances by their demands, my peace by their problems. Now there was none of that. I was free to wake up when I wanted, to spend money on myself for once, to go places I had always wanted to go, not because someone else wanted a vacation, but because I simply felt like it. I had spent so long giving to others that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. And now, I was relearning that, and it felt incredible. I hadn't spoken to Deborah or Sophia since that last phone call. I had no desire to. But that didn't mean I didn't hear about them, because word traveled fast. Deborah had tried to delay the inevitable, but within weeks, the house had officially gone into foreclosure. She had been forced to leave. I had heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had moved in with a distant cousin, one she had spent years looking down on. I smiled at the irony of it. The woman who had once boasted about never needing anyone was now sleeping in someone else's spare bedroom. And Sophia? She had lost everything. She was still married, but it was clear that her new life with Tyler wasn't going as she had expected. Because without my money cushioning her lifestyle, she was forced to live within his budget, and it wasn't enough for her. A friend of mine who worked in finance had told me he saw her at a restaurant with some friends one night. They had gone out, expecting Sophia to cover the bill, something she had always done in the past. But when the check came, she had hesitated, fumbled with her purse, then had to admit she couldn't afford to pay for everyone. I could only imagine the humiliation. And the best part? She did it to herself. One evening, just as I was getting back from the gym, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering. Hello? A pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Dad. I almost laughed. I almost hung up right then and there. Because after everything, after the lies, the disrespect, the blatant use of my generosity, she had the nerve to call me now. Sophia, I said evenly. There was another pause, then a shaky breath. I didn't think you'd pick up, she admitted. Why did you call? She hesitated. I don't know. That wasn't the truth. She knew exactly why she called, but she wasn't ready to say it. Toast Tyler? I asked casually, taking a sip of water. He's fine, she said quickly, too quickly. Oh, so things weren't going well. And your mother? Sophia exhaled. She's managing. Translation, she was barely getting by. And they both wanted me to feel bad about it. Is that why you called? I asked, my voice unreadable. And to give me an update on your mother's struggles? Oh no, she said quickly, another pause. She started, her voice breaking a little. I miss you, Dad. I let those words sit in the air, because for years I had waited to hear them. I had waited for her to show some kind of remorse, some kind of understanding. But now, I wasn't sure if I even cared anymore. Oh, you miss me, I repeated, not letting my tone reveal anything. Yes, she whispered. Or do you miss what I used to do for you? Silence. And that was my answer. She wasn't calling because she missed me. She was calling because she missed the comfort of having me take care of everything. Dad, please, she said after a moment, her voice small. I don't want things to be like this. Can we just talk? I smiled slightly. When you're talking, Sophia. She exhaled sharply. Oh, you know what I mean. I did, but I wasn't interested. When I spent years talking, I said, years trying to be part of your life. Years giving and giving, waiting for the day you'd see me as more than a bank account. She didn't say anything. And you never did, I continued. Not until it was too late. Another pause. So, that's it? She asked finally. That's it, I confirmed. We're just done with me? There was a time when hearing those words would have wrecked me, when the idea of being done with my own daughter would have felt like a failure. But now it just felt like freedom. I didn't walk away from you, Sophia, I said calmly. Walked away from me, you and your mother both. Silence. I finally just stopped chasing you. Another long pause, then finally she broke. I'm sorry. It was the first real apology she had ever given me, and maybe in another lifetime it would have meant something, but not now, not anymore. I sighed. Take care of yourself, Sophia. And before she could say anything else, I hung up. I sat in silence for a long time after that call. Not because I was sad, not because I regretted anything, but because I knew, truly knew, that I was done. She had apologized, but I had moved on. And I wasn't interested in reopening a door that should have been shut years ago, so I turned my phone on silent, poured myself a drink, and stepped onto my balcony. The night was calm, my life was finally my own, and for the first time in 30 years I was at peace.